welcome back to The Point Shot here. I'm Nick Gozen along with Zach Austin here. On this episode we decided to do, it's kind of like a little game, I guess. We wanted to take the free agent signings, because we both feel like there's not going to be much that changes between now and the beginning of the year. We figured we'd make some mock lineups to see, to kind of predict what we think, or rather what we would want if we were running the team. So we figured we'd make some lines here and read them off and explain why we put players in certain positions. I'll start off here. We'll do the forwards first. My top line, I'm keeping it kind of classic. I mean, I know Babcock's not here anymore, but I did kind of like what he had going here. I originally was not a fan of having Dekeyser on the top line. I really didn't think his skill set reflected that. I still kind of don't in a way, but when I started thinking about it, I didn't really see another spot in the lineup that I thought Dekeyser could really succeed in. So I kept him on the top line, and I have him playing with Datsyuk still centering the line. Now, keep in mind, Datsyuk might miss the first 10 games or so of the season because he's having surgery, obviously. But for the sake of this video, we decided that we were just going to keep Datsyuk in the lineup. So I have Dekeyser on the left wing with Datsyuk centering the line. And I'm kind of mixing it up a little bit. For the right wing, I have Nyquist playing with both Dekeyser and Datsyuk, mostly because when I watch Zetterberg and Nyquist, I don't really see a whole lot of chemistry there. I really don't. I mean, I know Babcock tried it over and over and over again, but I always felt that Nyquist played better when he was on the kid line. Now, I could have had the kid line, but I decided not to go that route this time, mostly because I didn't want Zetterberg playing center anymore, because I feel like his speed I feel like age is starting to catch up with him a little bit, especially after watching the end of last season. He just wasn't very strong on the puck and wasn't very quick to win puck battles either. So my top line is Dekeyser, Datsyuk, and Nyquist for that reason. Would you like to give your top line over there, Zach?
Why, yes, I would. My top line, not very much different than yours, honestly, but it is different at the same time. My top line, I got Dekeyser playing left wing. So, same thing as you. Datsyuk, I got him centering. Same thing as you. But instead of Nyquist, instead of old Gustav Nyquist, I went with Thomas Tatar. Interesting pick, I know, but I don't know. I just think the old Dekeyser with his grit, Datsyuk with his hands, and Tatar with his will just rounds out that top line perfectly for me, and I think that'd just be a great one to have on the old team here.
The thing was, I did contemplate putting Tatar on the top line. I mean, after the season he had last year, I mean, obviously he led the team in goals, and he is a sniper after all. So, I mean, it does make sense to have him on your top line, too.
Right.
I just did it for mostly chemistry reasons, because I believe Babcock has tried Datsyuk and Tatar together, and I'm not really sure that it worked out. I could be wrong, though. I think from recent memory that they didn't really click. But granted, Babcock never really kept lines together long enough for them to really develop new chemistry, in my opinion. Now, moving on to the second line, I have, as I stated earlier, I didn't want Zetterberg playing center anymore, so I moved him over to the left wing, where he'll be centered by Riley Sheahan. I think Sheahan has really stepped up. I'm a really big fan of Riley Sheahan. When he first came to the league, I was kind of indifferent on him. I really didn't see too many appealing qualities to his game. I mean, honestly, I kind of thought we had another Joachim Anderson clone in the making with Riley Sheahan, but he has completely proved me wrong. He has a lot of very quiet intangibles to his game. He's an amazing passer, actually. It's one of the most underrated aspects of his game. He's got a very quick shot. He doesn't use it as often as I would like him to, but when he does shoot, he does have a very good shot of scoring more goals. I think he really could be a 20-goal scorer someday, possibly scoring maybe 50 or 60 points someday. And then on the right wing, I got him playing with Thomas Tatar. So, I mean, I have half the kid line together. I got Sheahan and Tatar, but, I mean, I figured Zetterberg, you're not going to play Zetterberg on the third line by any means. And I think having those two together, they have a lot of energy. I think it would make it a lot easier on Zetterberg because, like I said, I don't think his skating is where it needs to be, and it might not even recover. I'm not certain, but I think that'd be overall a good line.
I agree with you. Once again, I went the same route pretty much, just one minor change. I went with Zetterberg on the left instead of centering, Sheahan up the middle at center, and Nyquist as my right wing. Reason I went with Nyquist is because Gustav Nyquist kind of plays the same style of game that Henrik Zetterberg does. And like you said, Henrik Zetterberg's lost his step, which is basically the main reason why I moved him over from center as well. But I think this line as well would work, the one that I have here with Nyquist, just because, like I said, he plays the same style as Zetterberg. He'd be able to take some heat off of Henrik, while Henrik can still try and contribute as best as he can. Even though he's getting older, he's still going to put up points. He's still going to score goals, but his prime's definitely behind him. And I think now you just kind of got to start winding him down a little bit. I think he's getting to that age now where that's just what you got to do with him. So.
And the sad thing about Zetterberg, I mean, he really started off last season with a bang. For the longest time, he was top 5 in scoring in the league. Nothing's really surfaced injury-wise about Henrik Zetterberg, which kind of surprises me and it kind of actually worries me. Because when they said Datsuk's having surgery, I'm like, okay, that kind of explains why he was a little bit, not himself towards the end of the year. Zetterberg, we never really got that explanation. So, I mean, maybe it is wearing down on him. I know he had back surgery just the last season. There's a lot of question marks there. I have no doubt that he'll still definitely put up the points that he normally does. But, I mean, for now, take it with a grain of salt. Take it easy on him and see where he's comfortable and see if he can regain his form. Now moving on to the third line, both of our third lines here. With the acquisition of Brad Richards, I thought it was no surprise that I would throw him as the third line center. And on his wings, I have him playing with Thomas Jurko on the left. One of the main reasons I have Thomas Jurko here is I still feel like there might be something there. I think under Babcock, he was told to change his game, in my opinion. I think he was focusing too much on his physical game. I don't think that's who he is. I mean, yeah, he is a pretty decent-sized forward, don't get me wrong, but he's not someone that really should be going out throwing the body every night. We've seen the YouTube videos, we've seen what he's done in juniors, we've seen how many goals he even scored in the AHL before he came to Detroit. I feel like that part of him is still there. So I think maybe under Jeff Blashill, somebody who he played for an entire season, maybe he can, fix his game back to where he's playing more offensive and can show off some playmaking abilities, because right now we haven't really seen much from Thomas Jurko yet. And then on the right wing, I have them playing with Teemu Pulkkinen. I think Pulkkinen is definitely deserving of a roster spot, in my opinion. I remember Wings fans were so geeked over Gustav Nyquist and Thomas Tatar finally making it in the league, but yet there's not really much talk about Teemu Pulkkinen, even though Pulkkinen has put up better numbers than both of them. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't really understand that. I don't think Pulkkinen's gotten a fair shot. And I think if you put him with Jurko and Richards, those are two guys that are both offensively minded, I still think. So I think that'd be a very interesting line. Richards, of course, always been more of a playmaker. Pulkkinen loves to shoot, obviously. And whatever Jurko wants to do on that line, go right ahead. I think they would all complement each other very well.
I agree with you. That's an interesting third line. Mine's pretty much the same thing, once again, with one minor change. I got Helm on the left wing, Richards up the middle, and Pulkkinen on the right. Reason I did that, I just think the same thing. I think whether you put Jurko or Helm there, I think all these players complement each other very well, whatever combination you wanted to do. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what exactly they do with this third line, because it's already, I believe, it's set in stone that Brad Richards is going to be the center on the third line. I don't think you're going to be able to take Datsuk away from his center position or Sheahan. Now, Richards might be up second, possibly first line center for a while, depending on how long Datsuk's out with that injury, with that surgery he's recuperating from. But at the same time, like I said, I believe no matter what way you go about it, I think the third line is going to be pretty solid this season just because of the Richards acquisition. So it'll be interesting.
And that takes us to our fourth line, where I'm pretty sure both of us will probably have pretty similar fourth lines, because I'm pretty sure two of them pretty much pencil themselves in and will pretty much put themselves in pen. With the year Luke Glendening has had last year and the year before, Glendening is for sure cemented himself as someone who's not just this guy that came up from the AHL and is just, maybe going to be here for a year or two. this guy might be here for quite a long time. Luke Glendening is one of the most hardest competitors I've seen in the NHL in quite a while. And there's no doubt about that he is one of the best defensive forwards in the league. I mean, Babcock was putting this guy up against Sidney Crosby most of the time when they played the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was doing a very good job of neutralizing him and some of the NHL's best. So for sure, Glendening would be centering that line for me. Drew Miller would be on the right wing. Miller, I don't know. I like Drew Miller. I'm not in a hurry to get rid of him. I mean, I realize there's probably going to be options better than him very soon that are going to make him expendable. I'd argue that he probably already is expendable. At one point, he was a 15-goal scorer. Now he's mostly just your power play, penalty kill specialist that gets fourth-line minutes. Maybe might chip in a goal here and there. But I've never really been a huge Drew Miller guy. But for the time being, I think him and Glendening together, they play a very rock-solid defensive game. And then that leads me to the person I have playing to their left in Darren Helm. I feel like the three of those together would be quite a nightmare as a fourth line. I know Darren Helm is probably better than a fourth liner, but in this case, with the way the lines work and my justification of the other three, he's kind of the odd man out, and that's kind of where I had to put him. And I think when you have Helm and Glendening on the same line, that'd be one hell of a forecheck against opposing defenses, and I think that would cause a lot of trouble.
Interesting points. Interesting. Yeah, once again, only one minor change to mine. Like you said, Glendening and Drew Miller both solidify their spots on the right wing and the center position. But instead of Helm on the left, I'm going to go with Thomas Yurko, and that's not for his lack of performance or lack of trying. That's just because I believe that's where he fits in this lineup right now. I'm not a fan of the style of play he's kind of transformed himself into playing since he's came up into the NHL. I don't understand why he's trying to play physical. I think he just needs to stick to his game because the kid's got incredible hands, and he needs to start using them. He's got amazing puck control skills, and he needs to start using that as well and utilizing that instead of trying to be the guy that goes to the dirty areas. I think if you ran with this line of Yurko, Glendening, and Miller, Thomas Yurko could still evolve his game just because you could tell him, all right, we need you to play offensively now. Don't go out there and try and play big and bad just because you're in the NHL now. Play your style of game. Because it's clear as day, OHL through AHL, the guy's a goal scorer. He's not a guy that's going to, play physical. He's not supposed to play physical. He's not supposed to, be going into the dirty areas, getting the puck along the boards, getting in board battles. I think if you left that up to Glendening and Miller, because I consider Miller a grinder.
Oh, yeah.
I think he goes into the dirty areas. He's not afraid to, take a hit. For puck possession, anything like that. I think if you left that up to those two, this line would pan out perfectly as well. But all in all, honestly, if you want my opinion, I think all four of your lines up and down, all four of your forward lines would work just as well as all four of mine. Even though there wasn't that big of a difference. I mean, most of them were just left wing changes. But other than that, I mean, at the same time, I think you could roll with any of these lines any night, and you'd still get a solid performance out of them. So we'll see.
And I think one of the main things is going to be how Jeff Blashill handles it. I mean, I think, granted, Blashill and Babcock probably might be pretty similar in many ways. I know a lot of these younger players enjoy playing under Jeff Blashill. They've made that public. So maybe they might feel more comfortable. They might feel more inclined to play their game instead of feeling pressured to play what Babcock wants, because I mean, we've seen what players in the past have had happen to them when they don't quite play to Babcock's game. They usually get a one-way ticket to the press box. Jakob Kindl and Stephen Weiss could tell you that straight up. I mean, and even to some degree, David Lagwan, who we agree the Red Wings pretty much ruined his entire career.
Turned him into a clairvoyant, yeah.
So I'm sure David Lagwan really enjoyed his time in Detroit. We'll move on to defense. Do you know if our defenses were pretty much the same, or were there minor changes there?
Our top pairing is the same, but our bottom two are not. So.
Oh, okay, interesting. So in that case, our top pairing, I guess we both had Cronwall and Mike Green,
yep.
Which I mean we talked about in the last episode why we really feel that they would be good together.
Yeah.
But moving on to the second pairing, I have I have Danny Dekeyser and Kyle Quincey. Now, the way I made my defensive pairings is I pretty much just ranked them how I felt they are talent-wise. I went pretty much talent-wise. I didn't go chemistry-wise in this case. I feel like Dekeyser and Quincey are your next two best defensemen after Cronwall and Green. Quincey is a very odd one. I don't really know where to peg Kyle Quincey. I mean, right when I think he's turning this corner to be this very reliable guy that can go out there and you don't even really have to notice him. You don't see any mistakes. He just kind of goes up and plays his defensive game. All of a sudden, he'll come back with a few just stinker games where he's giving the puck up left and right, and he just makes you wonder why we even still have him. But anyways, Danny Dekeyser also kind of falls under the same syndrome in a way. He has a lot of those games. I mean, I know a lot of Wings fans think very highly of him. I do to some degree, but I realize he's actually probably more expendable than what we really think. If I didn't rank these by talent-wise, I may separate them, but for the time being, I think Dekeyser and Quincey really not that bad of a pairing.
I agree with you. I mean, they rolled with the Dekeyser-Quincey pairing for quite a bit last season, and really they impressed me. They both were a very good defensive pairing. They paired well together. But I'm going to flip it up a little bit just because the way I did it is I didn't go by ranking. I went by the way I look at the Red Wings defense. Aside from your Cronwall and Mike Green, you got two guys that play a pretty reliable defensive game and two guys that can either blow the other team out of the water defensively, just shut them down completely one game, or the next game come in and be just absolutely lackluster. So what I did is I threw together two pairings, which I think my second pairing is just a bit higher level defense-wise than my third pairing. But I threw together these two pairings, my second and third pairing, just because of the reason I just wanted the most solid defensive pairing. And if it so happens that one of these two guys has a lackluster game, at least their butts are covered, is the way I looked at it. But anyways, getting down to the point here, my second pairing is actually Dekeyser and Jonathan Ericsson. Jonathan Ericsson is one of those guys that I like to mention who can play either flawless defense or he can be a complete bonehead and have an absolutely awful game. Danny Dekeyser, he's a solid defenseman. He's good on his feet, good puck-moving skills. I think that's one of the main reasons why I put him with Ericsson is because he needs to be with the guy that's going to move the puck out of the zone. Because Lord knows if you depend on him to do it, it ain't going to happen. Because it's either going to be him trying to dump the puck out and just giving it right back to the team for another entry, or him trying to skate it out. And a 6'5", 215-pound guy trying to skate out a puck in today's NHL really don't work. So that's the whole reason why I put together the Dekeyser-Ericsson pairing. I think that would work well. However, like I said, that's just my opinion. Personally, I believe Blashill's going to stick with the same pairing they used last year, your pairing of Dekeyser and Quincey, just because they mesh so well. But I'd just be really interested to see the Dekeyser-Ericsson pairing just to see how well those two can kind of lean on each other's game a little bit. Because Dekeyser, another thing with that, Dekeyser really cannot hold his own physically. Where Jonathan Ericsson, I mean, even though he's a big dude, he doesn't play as physical as I would like him to. But at least he's got a little bit of a physical element. So I think Dekeyser could lean on that as well, whereas Kyle Quincey, not really. I mean, Kyle Quincey's the type of guy where he's not going to play physical unless you start rattling him, and then he just goes into this stupid physical game where he's, taking stupid penalties, making dumb hits, tripping guys, boarding guys, whatever. That's Kyle Quincey's game. Jonathan Ericsson, at least, I think Danny Dekeyser could rely on him a little bit for that. But anyway, let's move on to third pairings.
Honestly, I couldn't really have said any of that better, in my opinion. I think that was pretty spot on. You went pretty much the babysitting route. Yep. That's kind of what it is, because I know you're not high on Ericsson, so you need kind of somebody to, be able to hold his own, and Dekeyser can do that. And that's kind of, I was tempted to go that route, actually, because my third pairing, in my opinion, is just putrid. Mm-hmm. I would not trust throwing this third pairing on the ice for probably more than 5 minutes a game. But I'm going to do it anyways. My third pairing is Jonathan Ericsson and Brendan Smith. Now, I pretty much rolled my eyes when I was writing it down, but there's really not much of a realistic option left. If it was truly my choice, I would probably have not even have kept Brendan Smith. The one thing that keeps me having hope for Brendan Smith, and this is pretty much it, is it's Jeff Blashill. It's honestly Jeff Blashill that keeps me having hope for Brendan Smith, because the way Smith is used in Babcock's system was just unorthodox. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense at all. You have a guy who wants to pretty much play forward, it seems, most of the time, just running around. He's pinching further than the forwards out there half the time, can't even get back. And yet you're not putting this guy on the power play. Why? That's the thing that always blew my mind when Babcock was the coach, is just, why isn't Brendan Smith on the power play? I understand he's a bonehead most of the time when he likes to play the puck from the bench when he has this. We all remember that penalty. Why would you not? Instead, you throw Danny Dekeyser out there every single power play, and you just watch him handle the puck like a hand grenade. It was terrible. And that's kind of the thing. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is maybe Blash will finally utilize him on the power play. Give him some kind of offensive role. Make the guy feel useful. Because his whole career, he's been an offensive defenseman. Let him play his game. Instead, you get like this half-assed like hybrid between like, oh, I should pinch in occasionally, we're down by 1 goal, or maybe I should just play defense the whole time. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And Ericsson, I don't really have too many positive things to say about Jonathan Ericsson. Don't get me wrong here. I think he's overpaid. We kept him for too long, and quite frankly, he's kind of useless. He's a pylon. But you know what? He's here. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to be traded. So guess what? He's going to be on your third pairing. So in this case, this is pretty much just process of elimination. If both these guys are signed for at least multiple years, you're not going to be able to put them anywhere. You can't send them down. So where do you put them? The third pairing. You put them together. So I would like to see maybe Ouellette or Marchenko kind of like, I don't know, relieve them every so often, have one of them sit in the press box. But I don't really see that happening because these guys have been here for a little bit too long for that to happen. But regardless, I mean, I'm not happy with my third pairing, but it's process of elimination. It has to work.
I agree with you. Like I said, you could go either route. Process of elimination, I think, would work as well, or the babysitting route, like you said I took, which, yeah, I did. But anyway, my third pairing is Smith and Quincey, and the reason I put him there is just because it's Brendan Smith. Like you said, you basically pointed out all the intangibles to his game. He's an offensive defenseman. He pinches too much. He's got great speed, but other than that, he's not going to give you too much on the defensive side. Half the time on the rush, he's caught behind the play, when as a defenseman, you're supposed to be in front of the play. As I've said a million times before, I'd like to see Brendan Smith get his shot as a forward position, kind of like a Brent Burns in San Jose situation. It's not going to happen. Got too much of a logjam going on, like you said. But, yeah, you got to put Brendan Smith down there, and just to babysit him, I think Kyle Quincey, because I think Kyle Quincey is a little bit more defensively responsible than Danny Dekeyser, but I think you can't trust Brendan Smith as much as you can trust Jonathan Ericsson, which is very little. So, once again, I guess that's my third pairing is Smith and Quincey, just because of the whole babysitting factor. I think Kyle Quincey would be solid. I don't necessarily think Kyle Quincey deserves to be a third pairing defenseman. I think he'd be a solid second pairing defenseman. But that's just the route I got to take just because of Brendan Smith. Because you can't put a Dekeyser-Smith pairing together just because two young guys, Dekeyser being solid on defense, he'd end up doing all the work, or Brendan Smith's caught behind the play. You putting pressure on Danny Dekeyser like that ain't going to work because Danny Dekeyser, from what I've seen, not a very good pressure-playing defenseman. And then the Quincey Ericsson line, I mean, you saw that before, and good Lord. That was just difficult to swallow. So, but yeah, that's my third pairing. Like I said, though, looking back on all our lines, forward and defense, forward lines 1 through 4 and defensive pairings 1 through 3, I think both of our options here would have worked for any of these.
They're very close.
They are very close. There's not a lot of difference, and then again on this team, there's not going to be a lot of differences because players have definitely solidified, their roster spot. The Red Wings are just that type of team where there's certain players, no matter if they're slumping or if they're red hot, they're going to be playing the same exact spot each night. Luke Glendening could have a 20-game goal scoring streak, and I guarantee you he's going to be sitting on that fourth line still, just because that's what he is. He's a fourth line kind of guy. You're not going to see an Abdelkader, Glendening, Zetterberg line or nothing like that. So, yeah, I think that's just what you get. I think, like I said, all these lines I think of ours would work out. Wow, home run. Tigers just getting shelled.
Well, we're going to wrap up this episode. I mean, we actually went a little bit over time this time, crazy enough. So tune in for the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one, and until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.